Hello, welcome to Colonel O'Truth's Miniature Issues. In today's episode, I'm building Undercrag Manor. This is a grand house made from cardboard, a toilet roll tube, and baking soda for a stone effect. I'll be painting the finished product, adding windows and doors, and finally 920 individual roof tiles. This is Undercrag City. Welcome to the Undercrag. If you've followed Undercrag City, you'll know that the mountaintop itself is a bit of a mess. I'm starting this next stage by tidying things up and giving myself a level canvas to work from. This is just a matter of building up the surface with foam and foam core board and filling in the gaps to close everything in nicely. Here you can see the tops of the two staircases, one going to Ceiling Lane and one going to the Sun Step. I've decided to start the Undercrag with one of its more important buildings, the Manor House. I've chosen where it's going to go, and now I'm planning out the house on card. These dimensions look surprisingly small given what this piece is going to become. I consider this design process more of a sketchbook than a final plan. Drawing it like this helps me to conceptualize it, but I'm open to changing things. I want this building to be very linear in appearance. Everything lines up, neat and tidy, and very grand. As usual, I'm marking my pieces north, south, east and west, because it's easy to get confused. Having everything drawn in front of me like this really helps to conceptualize the final piece. I'm essentially designing a kit. I want columns of feature stonework running up the face of the building at regular intervals, framing the windows. So it's a matter of duplicating the windows I've just drawn on the main building onto these column pieces as well. You'll see what I mean. Numbering everything to correspond. And now it's time to start cutting. I get through a lot of blades like this. Always make sure you've got a new blade. Dull blades are more likely to slip, and you'll either make a mistake or hurt yourself. And that's all my main components cut. Time to start putting things together. The intention with the manor house is that it should look different enough to Undercrag, while still fitting in with the general theme of the model. So I'm going for a very different architectural approach. But I'll be tying it in with Undercrag by using the same coloured roof tiles, window boxes, and other similar details. You can see I've left a gap on the southwest corner. That's where my round tower is going to go. And now I'm carving lines into my stone feature details before I cut them out and add them to the rest of the model. This carved stonework immediately adds bulk. I need to line these up nicely on the arches. Fortunately, I've done quite a good job of cutting these out. Now I want to fill in some of the gaps. As you can see, I've tapered the edges of my details. This all helps with the stone block appearance. Again, cutting my grooves out. And cutting notches to outline where the stones meet. This gives a nice, neat appearance to the corners, rather than adding individual stones, which is how I would have approached Undercrag. This building is newer, neater, tidier. And why not add some more detail? These are simple pieces, but they add bulk and character to the building. That's starting to look pretty good. I've decided to add some very interesting eaves. Make this an unusual house. Some pieces of foam board here. These are going to be stone window boxes. I've tapered the front edge ever so slightly and removed the paper. I've left the paper on the back for a better join to the rest of the model. And more simple triangles going in here. There's nothing complicated about these shapes, but they add so much character. Time to tidy up the corners. Make the stonework look a bit more convincing. And some very thin black card. Just cut into rectangles, just to break up some of the larger spaces above the windows. I want my roof tiles to be enclosed by a stone frame to keep everything very tidy compared to the buildings in Undercrag, which are much older. So some simple strips of card. Now for a toilet roll tube. Much too large, so I've cut a section out of it. I'm using this rather than making my own tube from cardboard because it's already curved, and that makes it easier to work with. The diagonal line of the seam will be hidden by details. I've got more arched windows lining up with the rest of the building. At this stage I was going to have 3, and the tower was going to start at the bottom floor. As you'll see, I changed my mind. It's a simple matter to work this into a tube shape and add a tab. Paper rather than card. That's a bit better. Now I want to add stone detailing to match the house, but the black card I use is too thick and likely to split if I try and bend it. So I'm going to use thinner card and do everything twice. I'm putting a plain piece at the back, and then I'll add more detailing over the top. You can see I've made the top window smaller. cutting notches where the individual stones sit. And cutting my top piece into individual stones. I curve each piece more than I need to and then press it into place. This keeps the edges down. Working my way down a piece at a time and paring off the edges of each block. That's looking pretty chunky. I'm happy with how this is looking. And I'm adding more window boxes. Because of the curvature of the tower, these need to actually be deeper than the 5mm foam board, so I've used yellow foam instead. When I'm happy with the broad strokes, it's time to add the tower to the house. I'll let that dry. More stonework. Here I'm hiding the join between the tower and the house. My first attempt leaves gaps. So I'm going to put some thin card just behind where my stonework is going. When the baking soda goes on later, this will all be nicely disguised. Get it nice and straight with the trusty pointy stick. And on we go. The roof of the tower is going to protrude over the edge. So I'm going to add a circle with a larger diameter than the tower itself, and some decorative triangles as stone supports. One in the middle of each piece of stone. And now for the baking soda. Everything gets a coat of PVA glue. Work in large sections when you're doing this. Your brush will pick up some of the baking soda and immediately solidify. That becomes really irritating if you're only doing a little bit at a time. You can remove the surplus immediately. Brushing it like this while the glue is wet gives the appearance of removing all of it, but it's still there. It'll come out when you paint it. The baking soda, just like the glue, tends to go clear as it dries. And now a dark grey undercoat on everything. This is the same grey as all of the stone of Undercrag City and the mountain itself. After all, the builders of Overcrag have access to the same resources. When the dark grey is dry, I dry brush everything with light grey. Again, exactly the same colour palette as the rest of the model. You can see the stone effect of the baking soda starting to come through here. And now white. That looks pretty solid to me. Now for a very thin black wash. As always, this looks very black when it goes on, but it will fade as it dries. This is the point at which I would also normally add yellow and green mosses, but I haven't decided what I want for this building, so I might do that later. This is starting to look quite dark and imposing. I'm going to add colour to break that up a little bit. Now for some windows. I haven't shown this technique for a while. I've got a sheet of acetate and some Mod Podge, and I'm stippling it on both sides, quite heavily. This creates the effect of imperfect, slightly obscured glass. With a Sharpie, I'm going to create a diamond effect for some nice decorative glass. I'm not measuring, I'm just drawing by hand. Leaded windows shouldn't look too perfect. And it's time to add them in. A generous helping of PVA, and on we go. It doesn't matter if the glass gets some glue on it, it'll dry clear and just help to obscure it slightly more, which is a good thing. With all the windows in, I need to create the front door. This is a piece of balsa wood. I've drawn planking into it, and I'm staining it with ink. I've decided to do a large piece, so I've got more later on. Now for some good old-fashioned geometry. For those of you who care, I'm using Pythagoras' theorem to calculate how to build the cone for the roof of the tower. I know I want it to be 45 millimeters high at the center. But how big do I need to make the base? I had to check my work a few times here. I made a couple of mistakes and had to go back. Essentially, I'm creating a circle with a section cut out of it so that I can then curve it into a cone. I just need to know how much to cut out. Feel free to jump ahead if this isn't your thing. There we go. I need to cut a 161-degree section out of my circle. So here's my circle, considerably larger than the tower itself. I spent 10 minutes searching in vain for my protractor, couldn't find it, so I'm calculating the angle instead. Let's start by cutting out the circle. I've marked where I think I've got to cut, but I'm lining it up and checking before I cut. Curving it a few times, and that's a good fit. Let's put a paper tab in there, let it dry, and then I can glue it together. Now that the maths lesson is over, it's back to the woodwork. Just some pale yellow dry brushing, followed by some white dry brushing, and a bit of a whoops. I'm going to use this finish for my door, whereas previously I would have brown inked over the top. In it goes. That's a nice rich colour. I've installed my LEDs. I've shown that process in previous videos. And it's time, finally, to build the roof and close everything in. I'm using thin black card. The wires for the LEDs are giving me a bit of trouble. Before I add my roof tiles, I'm adding more stonework detailing, including some chimneys. Just little pieces of foam board. Drawing the stonework in with a pencil. And on we go. I've got a simple framework of black board and I'll keep adding to that. The base strips are 7mm wide. I'm adding some 5mm wide strips on top. I've added 2mm on top of that, and I'm putting some little triangular pieces on the ends. Again, just simple details that will add character. And why not add triangles to my triangles? Even smaller pieces cut from thinner black card. And I'll finish the front step as well. All that new stonework needs baking soda. I'm sprinkling it on by hand. I don't really want to cover the whole model now that it's painted. There's the same dark grey paint as before. And here we go with my roof tiles. I've drawn out a whole sheet of them here, 6mm long, 3mm wide, from a cat food packet. Now with my trusty pointy stick, for the next 3 hours, this is what I'm doing. First one layer all the way around, and then the next, trying to overlap the gaps where you can. And that's what 920 roof tiles looks like, with a little paper cone on top of the tower. We're almost done. Some pieces of plastic tube to create chimney pots. Just held in place with blobs of PVA. Now all of the tiles get a light grey undercoat, working it into the gaps. While that's drying, I'll add some details to the door. Just some strips of very thin black card. Touch of silver paint. A light touch of rust ink. And it's back to the tiles. Everything gets washed with brown ink. When that's dry, a light yellow dry brush. Followed by white. And finally, rust ink. I think this model really needs this dash of colour. Undercrag and Overcrag are quite bright places, really. As a final touch, the window boxes are getting some plants. Daubing them with PVA and adding some coarse flock. The green just helps to brighten it up a bit. I'm adding tiny pinpricks of white paint on the top for flowers. And there we are. Overcrag Manor is done. With the manor glued in place, it will soon be time to blend it in with its surroundings and start work on more buildings, a stable and a yard. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.